Today, I'd like to talk about one of my favorite functional panels. This one is from Senesco Neurolab. It's called the HPAG Complete. Otherwise, I refer to it as the neurohormone panel. I think this is an incredible test for any preteen or teenage girl, teenage boy, male or female adult. I think it's an absolute necessity, especially in women's health. I find women's health to be fairly complicated and not as compartmentalized as a lot of pathways to finding solutions wind up doing. So, anyone who would be suffering from adrenal fatigue, uh, chronic inflammation, mental health, such as anxiety, depression. I think this is just an amazing way of looking at your health in a very unique and comprehensive way. And it's the deep dive. Functional medicine is often the deeper dive to look for where the imbalances are to create more balance. Even things like PCOS is going to be rooted in adrenal fatigue, and something like this is going to be really helpful. So there's a lot of different diagnosis that would benefit from looking at root cause and looking at big picture. This, along with one of my other favorite functional panels, is one of the most comprehensive ways you can take a look at your health. So let's get started here. Part of why I really love this is because I believe you can't look at the adrenals without looking at the neurotransmitters, because you really have to put into context the way somebody's navigating fight, flight, or freeze, the way that their parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system might be playing out. And even in individuals that want to do pharmaceutical for anxiety and depression, they may want to know what is their SSRI doing for their serotonin and what are the missing pieces they might be able to fill in along with that. So if you look right here, this top 2/3 is the neurotransmitter part of the panel. The biomarkers are listed here on the left side, starting with serotonin. These top two, serotonin and GABA, are inhibitory neurotransmitters. That means they calm the body down, can help the body be in a relaxed state. Individuals that come in deficient on these two may be experiencing more of the anxiety side of anxiety and depression. Sometimes on the elevated side, it's a different form of anxiety and it can still exist. And again, most people have a complicated pattern to the way their body is moving through things like anxiety. Serotonin and GABA help not only mood, but they can help inform sleep, so better quality sleep. Serotonin is mostly made in the gut, so imbalances here may be corresponding to something in the gut. And so sometimes people with having mental health and gut issues, there's a correlation there and maybe a need to look at both of them. The blue line is the reference range. The green is the optimal range. My personal opinion is that not everyone needs to be in the optimal range to be performing well enough to not need support. But it is also, again, looked at, I look at it as a whole, as well as the individual markers. This test, you can see they put a current value, and then they mark it here with this on the graph, really nice and clean. And then if retesting, I love this too, it's overlapped, so you can see the previous level. So this is a sample report. If this individual was real, you can see that they were completely out of the reference range for serotonin, and with support, they have come back to an almost optimal range. GABA is very influenced by genetic receptors as well as alcohol consumption. So too much alcohol can interfere in those GABA receptors. And so sometimes alcohol can feel relaxing, but within 24 to 48 hours, it can create less GABA for the body, which again helps calm the body down. GABA is a little harder to create support supplements for. It's a little, what I would call a little volatile and not always the solution. So maybe precursors or again, looking at how someone's inflammation is causing their markers to be out of range. So not necessarily will I recommend that someone support all these deficiencies. A lot of these neurotransmitters are linked to amino acids as precursors, and those amino acids come from protein. And so not just looking at someone's ability to, um, again, produce these amino acids, but what is their gut health saying about the way they absorb their proteins? Not only, it's not just about getting enough, but again, are they absorbing it? And is there some interference in there? Norepinephrine is like an alarm system that goes off, especially when the adrenals are feeling stressed and burdened with excess, either overproduction or underproduction of cortisol. Epinephrine is like the adrenaline. And so, again, sometimes it's not necessary for these to be in an optimal range. Norepinephrine on the high side, you can see, again, if this was a real result, this person was pretty high, that would cause a different form of anxiety. So these next series of neurotransmitters, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, glutamate, are called excitatory neurotransmitters. They are involved in like lifting, the zest for life, good focus and acumen, and just feeling kind of ready to meet the day, greet the day. Dopamine is the dominant one here, and dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine are all tied together, but often it is the dopamine that is the dominant force here. Dopamine and serotonin have a relationship as well. They're not like completely joined up, but they can be influenced over time, especially in the case of using pharmaceuticals. Using an SSRI may deplete dopamine reserves over time, or vice versa, doing something that influences here on a continual basis without allowing the body to fluctuate may cause other imbalances. So it's not just for people who want to go the natural route of supporting their health and wellness. It may be about somebody who's looking to navigate their medications differently or support what their medication doesn't support. So just again, an integrative approach to their health. So really has some great things here to offer. PEA is a lipid molecule. It's an abbreviation. It is responsible for regulating pain, inflammation. It can affect mood and hormones. The reference range looks fairly small here, in my opinion. If someone is overproducing PEA, it's their body's signaling that there may be too much inflammation going on. It's trying to, in a way, run its own interference. So it can be a marker of the need to look somewhere else and determine what that inflammation really is. Some functional panels only do this support right here, or this testing. It looks at adrenals comprehensively, cortisol, DHEA, and hormones. But again, I find it really important to understand, because when someone is in a crisis and their adrenals are affected, whether that's really burnt out or mood issues or sleep issues or just really chronic inflammation, it's really important to know what the adrenals are doing. You can see these are the biomarkers here: morning cortisol, afternoon cortisol, evening cortisol, night cortisol. Morning DHEA, afternoon DHEA. The reference range is going to be different. We start with a need for more cortisol first thing in the morning, and it tapers off. You can see the lowest amount for evening cortisol is 0.4 to 2.1 is the reference range, 5.1 to 11.6 the morning. So this is why if you just have your cortisol checked on a traditional blood panel, you only may be looking at morning cortisol and then supporting it maybe incorrectly, because your pattern to your cortisol may zigzag. Your morning cortisol may be super high and the rest of it is bottomed out. It could be fluctuating morning cortisol on the low end and the rest of the day on the upper end. So it's pretty important to kind of lay out a big picture of what your cortisol is doing so you understand. It also can help identify different times of the day that can be key stress or have higher amounts of inflammatory influences, and being able to unpack that with someone is really important. I find that a lot of generalized nutritional supplements that say adrenal support may be misleading individuals, because some of them are increasing cortisol and someone's cortisol is already too high, or it may be relaxing cortisol and their cortisols are already too low. So, I could take 10 people, they're all complaining about the same symptoms. We run this kind of panel and you can see that their adrenals would be doing different things, performing differently. So I think it's really important. I'm a big believer in customization. It's really important to know what your body is really doing based on what it's telling you. And adrenals are such a critical part of our overall health and wellness. I'm seeing teenagers in what I would call states of adrenal fatigue. There are different phases depending on how your adrenals are performing, whether they are overperforming or underperforming. And then that's going to affect the neurotransmitters. It's going to affect how your body is signaling and releasing. And it's also going to influence hormones. So it's not enough to just check your hormones, because if some of these hormones are influenced by your adrenals, then that's more of a big picture hormone look. You can see under adrenals, they're called hormones. And so when we use the word hormones, we're often thinking of just these: testosterone, progesterone, estrogen. I like this one. It does all three estrogens, paints the biggest picture. And also, again, your DHEA is an important part of managing your hormone health. It is a precursor to testosterone. It influences all hormones, but primarily it's running the testosterone. So it's really important, if there's low testosterone, that you're looking at your DHEA so you know what that's doing. And also in terms of fertility, I think this is a really important piece too, to understand what is going on with the way your body's navigating stress, inflammation, what your DHEA is doing, really important for implantation. And then again, looking at what your hormones are doing. This is more of how your body is influenced overall in navigating your hormones than we realize. And of course, the way that I like to talk about the adrenals is that they are influenced not just by stress. We have a very narrow view of the word stress. I'm a big believer that the body is interpreting not just stress in the way we narrowly think about it, but also in bigger ways as stressors. What are the stressors that we are adding to our system, whether that be high inflammatory foods, or whether that be alcohol, too much caffeine. Caffeine is really hard on the adrenals. And often what happens when people are in a state of crisis where they are in severe adrenal fatigue, they're relying on caffeine to pump them up and get them going. If they have low excitatory neurotransmitters, they don't have enough get up and go. And so they're relying on caffeine. The problem is, you might as well be adding gasoline to your fire of adrenal fatigue. It's making it worse. And you're going to need some help and support and guidance to be able to navigate away from the caffeine and rebuild those adrenals, calm those neurotransmitters, or support them and boost them and get them up and running so that you can feel like you can move through without a stimulant in excess that can be really hard on the body. A lot of these energy drinks, again, just really hard on the adrenals, and they create a loop where that an individual is going to become highly dependent on it, because the more they drink it, the more it actually and creates a stress to their adrenals and creates more of a problem there. So it's really about understanding, if we're going to make these choices, we need to understand the true impact they're having, so that we can have just a real greater awareness that this choice is in my best interest, or this choice is possibly a setback, or this choice is going to hurt me. and being able to be more of a participant in our choices so that we understand, oh my gosh, how did I get here? And being able to put the pieces together. I find this is really helpful too, because oftentimes people are moving through their health going, like, what's wrong with me? As opposed to understanding, oh, this is out of balance, this is out of balance. And so I really tell people too, when we're addressing something like this, we're going to do it in three phases: the acute, the rebuild, and the maintenance. Because it's not my style to overwhelm an overwhelmed body with a lot of strategies. It's about careful navigation of those strategies to make sure individuals are climbing out of the pit that they find themselves in gracefully and with an ability that they're able to do this, because sometimes those adrenal crashes or being in a state of constant adrenal fatigue can be very hard to get out of, or when hormones are really imbalanced, or when someone's neurotransmitters are just in absolute crisis. The motivation to, the natural chemicals, which are those nutrients, just aren't there for them. If we kind of think about neurotransmitters as like almost like a savings account where we take withdrawals, well, we have to put deposits in. And so the food that we eat, the way that our diet and lifestyle, the sleep we're getting, the water we're hydrating ourselves with, the way that, we are moving through the typical way that things are stressful in life, work, family, finances, all of that, having that big picture so we can kind of really unpack that and look at, well, during periods of maybe higher stress or illness or states of crashes, maybe navigating diet and lifestyle a little bit differently is going to help offset that. So there's just multiple ways of kind of interpreting this and looking at it and bringing someone back into a place where they feel that they are moving towards better health. But this is absolutely one of my favorite panels. I strongly recommend it. I think as we become a more stressed culture, it's really important to take a look at something like this. So I hope you get a chance to experience the panel and the benefits that are available to you. Thanks for joining me.